colorness. That's scary.
It's scary. You can do it just black and white too. And I will show that today as well. Okay, so she's got her lovely sketch. Beautiful design, by the way. I love it. Okay, and she's planned out her trees and everything. And you found lots of reference photos. So when you do yours, you want to be looking at those reference photos. I'm just going to make mine up. Because I was a rendering artist. This is what I did for many years. Plus I've done it as a designer too. So I recommend starting with a line drawing first. So pens like this are good. Any type of pen of this nature is nice to draw with. So the first thing, and I recommend keeping them as loose as possible. If you're not great at drawing freehand, you could use a ruler. But if you do, let's say I'm going to use a ruler. If you do, you want to keep it loose and quick. So meaning sketch beyond the edge a bit. Make the lines quick and look kind of sketchy. So where I'm crossing my corners, if I'm going to use a ruler, we don't want to make this perfect drawing, right? We want to make it look like an idea. So doing little flicks like that, allowing the corners to cross. So if you're not comfortable drawing freehand, then so you can see I'm kind of fairly light on the pen, letting the corners cross and just sort of flick, right? And then you can slow down for some of the edges too. So that's one thing you could do. I recommend getting used to just sketching freehand. And this is what's nice about these see-through papers. You can put on top of your construction drawing and take a few passes at it. So you get a line drawing and say, I like that. Once you like it, then you can start adding some color media or shade and shadow media. So just going to see what we're doing here. So one of the things here too, I can still also cross my corners. It's really common in concept sketches to allow your corners to cross. So, and if you start with a quick pass where you just sort of skim on the page. So I'm moving from my shoulder joint. I sort of start kind of light and then I can slow down. So then I know where I want my line. And I kind of try to use my body as if it's a drafting machine. Like I'm moving from a shoulder joint. It's still like this, right? I'm trying to get myself to help myself draw straight lines. And if you keep it looser, it allows you to make mistakes and not have it look like a mistake, right? So if you cross your corners, if you take a couple of quick passes, it won't look messy. It'll just look creative, right? And if you do make a mistake, the mistake hides in all these sketchy lines. And it's not this, you know, I've done all this drawing and there's one line that's wrong. So like with your little pavilion you were drawing, Sophie, if your sketch technique were a little looser, you could probably just fix that one board that's out of perspective, right?
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be a problem.
I tried to make the line dark on the bottom because like.
Yeah, that's one way to fix it. Just make all the shadow lines darker.
No, but
right,
I mean, I already made the shadow line darker, so that's why I wouldn't be able to fix it.
Mm-hmm. So sometimes start lighter and then slow down. And so this can help to make sure you're kind of, you take that dry run first, like do just a really light line. Now I know where I want my pen to go, then you can slow down, right? So, which means you're moving a lot from the shoulder. It's not like drawing, we don't draw the way we write, okay? Let's see, what am I drawing here? Oh, that line wasn't there. Oh, it was a construction line. Oops. You'll know your design though. So one of the things I want to do is draw upper edges a little bit lighter and under edges a little bit thicker. So what I'm doing here is I'm just pushing on my pen and slowing down a bit when I want a line to be a little more shadowy. So lighter pressure where I want a thinner line, right? I want a thicker line. I'm going to push on my pen. So out of one pen, I can get different line weights. So upper edges, I would rather have a little bit lighter because there's more light at the top of the building or bench or whatever it is. Where does this go to? It goes straight down. Okay. And then what happens there? There might be a bit of a ledge or something. Here, there's going to be a bit of a shadow line. So I'm going to push a little harder on my pen. I actually like using slightly thicker pens than this. This is a 02. I might prefer a 05 so that I could have more line weight change. But I can also come and use a thicker pen where I want extra shadow too. Okay, so now is this wood, or is this going to be one of the wood elements?
Yeah,
one of them. So, and then you might do it differently than I do, but let's say this thing's made out of wood. I can draw some of the material there. Okay. She's going to decide what all her materials are. You do you. I'm just going to pretend that I'm going to alter this a little bit to whatever I might imagine it to be. Okay, and then there's a window in here. So the window, I'm going to push harder on the underside. Oops. You can take a couple of passes even. So this is what's good about being sketchy. I might even be more sketchy and more quick, right, with it. And then this angles in. Such a nice, I love what you designed. It's awesome. So, and if you can start lighter and then darken up if you want, or draw dark where you know you want dark. Now, some of you also watch the architect, I can't remember his name, but he has a YouTube channel called 30 by 40, right? And he has this sort of wiggly line he uses. And the great thing about little wiggly lines is you don't have to worry if you get a wobble in your line once in a while, because they're all wobbly, right? And that'll helps you have a little bit of, it just looks kind of creative. So that's what we want with a concept sketch. It's not trying to be perfect. It's showing you, it's just showing, look at this cool idea I came up with. And it just looks so creative. So you can do this little wobble in your line if you like that look. And then that way, nothing looks like a mistake, right? So, and it just looks really creative. Personally, I don't like the little wobbly line thing, but I did work for a design office where we all were supposed to draw with the wiggly line, because that made us all look like the same artist, even though there was 20 of us. So that kind of worked, because even though everybody wobbles a little bit differently, it still had the same general look, right? So what I prefer is a quick drawing line, and that with crossing corners. So you'll have to decide, what do you like for yourself, right? You could also look into different types of pens to see what you like. So this one, I'm finding it's a little bit thin. I prefer the 0.05 now, because I can get lots of different line weights out of it. I also like buying specialized pens. Like this one's kind of fun. It's called the Pentel Tradio. I'm not sure. Sounds Spanish or Italian or something. It's got this like plasticky little triangular nib. And it's great because it's stiff. I can use it with a ruler. So it's kind of like having a brush tip in a way, where I can have a flexible line, but I can get lots of different line weights out of this one pen, and it never mushes down because it's got a hard tip. So I can, with this, get a lot more line weight change out of one pen. I can use it in this direction, and it's thinner. I can push the pen down on its side and get something thick. So there's lots of different sort of line weights depending on how I move the nib. And it's a cartridge pen. so it's reusable. So I always like getting things I don't have to throw away, and that I can just keep using. So do you see I can get like a nice thick line if I want something bold, right? But I can still get thin. And it allows me flexibility, but I still have a stiff nib that if I want to use my ruler, I can. So even if you make a mistake, if you have a scribbly line, right, you don't have to worry about being so perfect. Cross your corners, right? But you see how this looks a little bit weak? That looks much bolder, right? So that's what's nice about a pen that you can get some variety out of. I can even push on that sideways and fill in a whole area dark if I want, right? So inside your windows, you might want to put like a little bit of a darker line. And you also want to decide, well, what is your light direction sort of before you start drawing, right? So I guess maybe we'll do this way so that this is dark and this is dark and inside here. So it's nice to have some kind of pen that you can push on to get a variety of lines. The other thing you can do is just have two pens, a thin one and a thick one, right? So let's see, and then under here. So start by having a sketch that has some definition and interest in the lines itself. And maybe let's start sketching some of these other elements. If she wanted a fence back here. So it's better to try to be quicker and not as precious with it when it's a sketch, right? And then it doesn't matter if there's some little perspective error, it's not bang on, it's okay. And so my trees, so try with trees to draw kind of quick jaggedy lines that quickly change direction. Also think about that light direction, it's coming this way. So I'm gonna push a little harder on this side of the tree. That's what I like about this pen too. As I move it around, it'll change thickness, which is really nice for vegetation. It doesn't feel too mechanical, right? And then what do you got for your treetop here? You've got this kind of, so again, you might say I'm gonna have a lighter line on the upper edge of the tree. And then I'm gonna have a little thicker line on the shade side of those leaves. Push a little harder on your pen. You can do the same thing with these types of pens. If you just push harder, you'll get a thick line. Lighter, you'll get a thin line. So you have to decide what's your style of drawing, right? And we're going to add some color to this. So we don't have to make it like perfect, right? It's just giving some support to the color that's going to end up on here. And then she put some bushes. So the looser your style, the more you can get away with stuff, right? Which is useful because sometimes it's hard to make everything perfect. And then maybe it also makes it look more creative. The looser the drawing, so here I'm just moving from my shoulder joint, right? The looser the drawing, the more creative it looks. Because this is what they want. They want to see ideas that you're coming up with, right? And if I make mistakes, not the end of the world. I can just skim over it quickly. Look at this quick idea I made. It's so cool, right? Look at some trees over here. Okay. And then you wanted a tree in this side too, right? Oh, there's some smaller trees now. Okay, so she's got a tree here, some kind. And I liked what you were doing. You were looking at what have some other architects done? How do they do their trees? You found some styles you liked for your trees, right? There's all many different styles of drawing. So it's good to look at what you think is a nice style that you say, oh, I can see myself doing that. That's great. That's a good idea, right? To look, what do I think would work for the way, my style, right? Or even if you don't have a style yet, what style do you like and that you could start to emulate? All right, so then she's got some more fence here. So it feels fence-like. And then she's indicated a bit of a house here. The other house that's not your property, just do it really, really light. okay? So it's just a ghost of an image there, just to say there's a bit of a context of something's going on back here. So that doesn't feel like naked. Don't have your building or bench or table, whatever you've designed, just floating in the white page. Always sort of ground it a bit with something, okay? So that we've got a bit of a context. Okay, so great. So now we have a drawing. And I would probably say, and then you can come back and add some extra dark. So you might say you don't have a fancy pen like that. You might just have a couple of different sizes of these. You might want to pick up like more of a bullet tip here. So this is sort of a round tip, and this is great for adding those darks too. So I could say, yeah, I want to add some dark. So just all your undersides go over with a heavier pen, right? I want to give this a little more emphasis here, right? That helps me sort of find that strength for the shadowy sides of things if they're just a thicker pen. I made a mistake, I just hit it. It's okay. Right? So, okay. So you can do that. Now let's add some color to this thing. So you can also take that and say, I'm going to put, if you have access to a photocopier, you can put this paper through a photocopier. It's an appropriate weight, as long as it's cut to the right size. You could photocopy onto a couple of pages because maybe you're not sure how that's going to go, right? So you could do that. You know, you could photocopy just onto regular bond paper and use pencil crayons and pastels on that paper. This paper is meant for marker, but I thought I'd show you a little bit of pastel technique in case you want to see something that's affordable and easy to do and that you may have. Like a set of pastels is quite affordable. These are chalk pastels, not the oil ones. And you might already have some pencil crayons. And it's something that you're more accustomed to than marker. Because marker, it's a bit of an expense to buy them. And I want to show you both today. Does anybody happen to have some Post-it notes with them today? I forgot to bring Post-it notes. But I do have this tape. So this is a yellow painter's tape that I really like. It's called frog tape. And you can buy it in just the paint section of a hardware store or a paint store. So like house painting. But it happens to be a great art tape. So it's painter's tape, but it's a great art tape because it's low tack, and so it won't rip my page. And so I sometimes use Post-it notes, but I could also use tape. So if I want to do that, I can put, and this is great because I can see through it. It's easy to rip, and I could mask off the edge of my building. So a lot of times I just use Post-it notes, and they're reusable. They're already cut to different sizes. They got square edges. They're quite handy, right? But this is a white building, and I want it to look really white, right? So I could take a little time and just mask off the edge of this building. You don't have to get super fancy about it. I'm just using my fingers, and I'm just tearing this. You could use a knife too. You can cut out and have it fit with a knife, because that's one of the things that's nice about this paper. This tape is so see-through that I could put some tape down, cut around it lightly, so you don't cut through your paper, right? So wherever possible, just have it fit. And then the rest you could cut. Or if there's a shape that you have to get around. So what's nice with this is it doesn't tear your paper. Even your drawing paper, that's a little bit more, it has more texture than this. It doesn't rip. So let's say like this area here, I could try to just, so peel it off carefully. It lightens the line a little, but not too much. It's still fine. Now, mind you, it's best if you let your paper dry, let the ink on the page dry before, just like a few minutes before you start drawing with other media.
Why are we?
So I'm going to show you why we're taping.
Are we doing around it?
We're going to do around it. Yeah. So, okay, so here I want to have a sharp knife, so an X-Acto knife or one of these types of retractable knives, and I could very lightly cut. So if I have a sharp blade and I use next to no pressure, just enough to cut the tape, not enough to cut the paper. And then I can peel that up and off. So you have to get a sense of how hard you have to push where you're just cutting the tape, not your paper. Okay? And then you can cut around all these shapes and fill in details. So nice new sharp blade with next to no pressure will cut very neatly around things. Okay? See? And so that's what's nice about this frog tape. It doesn't rip my page, and I can see through it. So it takes a little bit of time to prep this, but it's going to make a really nice effect. So maybe I'll just have it fit to that and then cut the rest out. This is also great if you want to use gouache paint. Like, Georgina, you had that really neat design that I said, what if you painted that? What if you made it a graphic design, right? You can use this kind of tape to mask and just use acrylic paint or gouache paint. Doesn't work well with watercolor though, because watercolor wants to bleed underneath, okay? So, all right, so now let's put some color in the sky in an easy way, because shading with pencil crayons, that might look kind of messy. I could show you a way you could do it, but pastel is really nice to use. And an easy way, so last week I showed you that you could use a knife and scrape powder off of a stick, right? There's of course a risk of cutting yourself when you do that, and it takes a little while. There's another method. You could use a piece of sandpaper and just take your color, rub on the sandpaper. It's going to make your stick turn into powder right away. Plus, it keeps your stick flat. So if you want to draw with it, it's still nice and flat. It doesn't have those cut lines from your knife, right? You can also blend colors this way. Let's say I don't have quite the color I need. I can take different colors I have in my set and blend them together right on my piece of sandpaper, so that I can get the exact color I might want for my building or my sky or whatever it is that I'm making. So that's the nice thing, that I can take relatively simple, not necessarily a huge kit of colors, and still get what I want. So now I can just pick the color up off of here, and now I can put it on my page nice and strong right into those corners. Going to give me a really strong blue to make. This is a makeup sponge. I can use Kleenex. I can use a cotton ball as well. That works really well. So this was part of what we did last week as a simple one, but now we're going a little more finished. And look, once I take that tape off, we're going to have this wonderful white building is just going to show up off that blue sky. Yeah, and it just looks amazing, right? Do you see? So now what I like about makeup sponges too, I can also draw around an edge with that, but it will never be as crisp as the tape, right? But this could be okay for my background, because I don't need my background to be as rich, as exact, right? So, but I could also, oh, I'm gonna make some clouds, right? So it looks like airbrush painting, it looks like watercolor, but it's easy to use. You can just photocopy your drawing onto any kind of paper if you want. If you're worried that you might not be able to do it as nicely as you want. And then I could lighten that up a bit. I can smudge it in a little. You can even make a sunset if you want, very easily with this method. And here, I'm just going to use the sponge. I don't need this building to be as precise as mine, right? I just want to show. I'm going to get a little bit lighter. Now, I forgot to mask that off. That's not the end of the world. I can grab a piece of paper. What do I have?
My mom just asked me to let her in. Can I just quickly go there?
Yeah, sure. Just grab. So any kind of card or paper, it's like a little parking thing. I can just lay that on there. Do you mind closing the door for me? So, yeah. That still gives me a good edge, right? And I could use that here too if I want. Okay, so that's a quick way to get a sky in that looks nice, okay? Those trees. Okay. There. So I'm going to do a little bit more drawing of background stuff before I take the tape off. I can erase out of this or leave some of that there so that it's going to be like holes for my trees. There's my eraser. Can you grab me that tough enough little eraser, that pen eraser? That, thank you. Okay, so here maybe I want to erase some of this. I could even leave some of the sky there so that like it looks like there's little holes through the trees, right? So let there be bits of sky coming through a little bit for your trees, right? So the great thing about a set of chalk pastels is they're super affordable, right? So, I mean, because a lot of times, you know, not every student can go buy every latest, greatest thing or a whole set of Copic markers or whatever, right? So they're fantastic because again, they're not throwaway, they're refillable. They do work really well, but they are expensive. I think they're like $7 each. It's crazy. 10? They're 10 now? Oh my goodness. Okay, so that's great. If I have some dust building up, I just take it and I'm just gonna knock it off, just like that. There, get rid of some of that dust. Okay. I want to do some work for the trees here, and I think I forgot some equipment today. Shoot. I did. Forgot to bring my smudge sticks or Q-tips.
Oh.
Right. So what I often use, you have one?
I used a little bit.
Oh, perfect. So there's little smudge sticks that you can get. They're for rubbing, smudging graphite drawings or pencil drawings. Those work great. Q-tips work wonderfully.
I have them.
Do you? Oh, wonderful. So you probably bought it from the camp, maybe? Oh, you have one of those too. Great. Yeah, bring it over here.
Oh,
Yeah. So this, but yeah, and there's that. So let's show people because mine's really dirty. So this is a little paper smudge stick. They work great for this technique. And then you can actually buy these little palette knives called Soft. And you can get little refills. The palette knives come in different shapes, and you can use that directly to apply your pastel. So it's really handy. And I like to say, let's have one color on this side, another color on that side, try to economize. They're just like makeup applicators, really, right? So if I want to use a smudge stick, and I could always replace this one for you if you want. I can get you a new one. Let's say I want to get some, and you can see actually there's little wear marks on my sticks. So if you pick up color like this, and I'll get you a new stick, okay, Sophie?
It's okay. I can just take them from my school.
Oh. So I've actually worn a groove into this color here where I was picking up onto the stick. And what I like to do is pick up a few different colors onto my stick. So that I rub some color on one side and some color on another side. And I might even pick up a third color, like maybe a little bit of yellow or something. So that as I use this stick, it's got a few different colors on it, right? I can now draw my tree and just wiggle that stick around, and it looks like this lovely, you know, those lovely watercolor paintings you've made, Zalia.
Yes,
You know, it looks like this, right? And it's so easy. Do you see how fast this is?
so cool.
And it looks like so creative, so fast. It gives you control, like you can draw up to an edge, right? So it's not a powdery mess. So normally, like artists are going to pick up the stick and draw on the page, but it makes a lot of powder, which isn't great from an interior design or architecture perspective, right? We need something that gives us some color without making a big powdery mess on our page. Once I run out of powder on here, I need to go pick up some more. So there's nothing in it, it's just sitting on it, right? So, and just use a light pressure, because if you push too hard, you just polish down the tip and it doesn't work anymore, it won't hold anything. So, so that can give us some of that. I might want to pick some softer colors for the background trees. So just buying a set, these are Prismacolor brand. So they match the Prismacolor pencil crayon sets you can get, which is kind of handy too. And they're a little bit harder. They're not as messy as normal soft pastel sticks are. So they're kind of handy to use. I could put in some softer colors for the background trees, right? So it doesn't take too much attention. If you want to make it darker so it shows up your building, though, you could, right? You could pick a dark green back there if you want. There's a dark. I lent my set to one of my students a couple of weeks ago. My newer set. This one is 20 years old. Oh. I have a new set that I lent to a student, and she just hasn't had a chance to get it back to me yet. So I don't have all my colors, but. So you don't need to have a huge set. That was 48. But even with 24 colors, you can do a lot. Okay, so that it gives us a little bit of contrast for our trees. So all the background can be done in that way fairly quickly. And using these kinds of things or these sorts of ones. So if I want to use this, I either need the bigger, so these are small pastel sticks. You can buy the fatter ones, they're a little bit softer, and I can grab right off of that. There's also little pan, they're like little compacts of pastel powder that's like quick pickup. So that's what's meant for using these. But again, you're going to spend a lot of money if you buy all of those. So we don't necessarily need to do that. So what I can do though, just buy a set. You know, just buy maybe one of these. Get some Q-tips. They're cheap, right? And a smudge stick. These cost like, they're so cheap too. Like they're paper, like less than $1 to buy, right? You can mix the color you want on your sandpaper here, pick it up on your tool, and put your fence on. Pretty easy, right? And it's done. So I might say, I like that color. Now, one of the things we were saying in my pencil crayons, I didn't happen to have the right color. And you might not either. So that's what's really nice about this technique of either using a knife and scraping off the color or just rubbing onto the sandpaper. You could kind of custom mix just the right color, a little bit of brown, a little bit of gray. Oh, I want a little bit of tan. I could get the color that I really want for this, this wood that you're imagining, right? And it might load up with a little bit of variation onto your little tool, which would be good, right? You could put it on there. And this one, you can kind of rub unevenly a little bit to get that wood feel. Gives you a little bit of control. I'm using the edge as well. So you can use the flat when you want to do a large area. You can use the edge when you want to give it a bit of texture. If you want to give more precision, just put a piece of paper or a Post-it note there, right, to give yourself that edge. Now I want this edge to be a little darker. And then of course you can erase it, right? I'm going to pick up a little bit darker color. So I want some contrast here. So it gives you pretty good control, right? You see? So it's kind of worth buying even just one of these. You can buy a whole set, but you don't need to. They also sell these big sponges, but these are way cheaper. You know, it's not as precise, but you can cut that with a sharp pair of scissors to make it more precise. So if I get a little bit of over dust, I can erase that. Just clean it up a little bit. That's what's nice about this marker paper too. Do you see it takes the media well, but I can erase it well too, right? So that's that. Okay, let's have some moment of truth. Let's take off the tape. So if you've got fingernails, that's good. I should have clean fingers before I touch my page. You can also use the tip of a knife if you don't have fingernails. Gently coax up the corner of the tape and then slowly peel it off. Okay? So that if you can't, so just be gentle, don't cut your page. And then slowly peel it off. Sort of support the paper so you don't wrinkle the paper. And look, wow, looks so nice, right? And it was easy. It didn't take painting experience. You don't have to be on specialized watercolor paper. But it looks like watercolor. So it's easy, it's affordable, doesn't take skill really. Little, but not much, right? Because watercolor, getting really good at watercolor painting takes quite a bit of practice. And it's slower because you have to get this image onto your watercolor paper. Here, I just traced it till I had a drawing I liked. So it's much more efficient for making your portfolio. Slowly peel that off. So you see, with this paper, it's kind of thin, so I have to sort of support it so I don't wrinkle my paper. Oops, I didn't make that corner perfect, but I can always fix that later. There. Okay. Not bad. And then you can erase things if you have any smudge. Right? So before you take off the tape, clean your fingers and get rid of any excess powder by just sort of knocking the page into the garbage can. Okay, now I want to make sure I have lots of contrast in this building. So my light's coming this way, so I need to make this side darker. I need to make this side dark, that side dark, this side dark. Inside the windows, either look at what do windows look like find a photo. Sometimes they'll reflect the sky, and a lot of times they'll just look dark. And then you can erase out a few reflection lines. So that, so here I might want to put some gray, or I might want to do a gray violet to make it look a little prettier instead of just gray. So let's see. So maybe I don't have a gray violet, but I can make a gray violet. So that's again what's nice about these pastels. Might not have the perfect color, but I can make it. So a little bit of violet mixed in with my gray to just make a nicer looking shadow color. Okay. So it's because sometimes, you know, it can be quite a lot of money to buy everything you need, and which is hard as a student sometimes, right? So that's what it's so great about these pastels. I can mix. I used to do some renderings this way for a while before the days of Revit and Photoshop. I did them by hand. And so I would mix the colors to match the paint color, to match whatever, you know, brick or whatever the architect wanted for their building. I could actually mix exactly the color I wanted till it matched. And it was also handy what I did with one of my clients. We did the black and white drawings first, it's just line drawings. We copied those, and then we added color. Okay, so now I have a nice sort of blue, violet, gray color that I can use for my shadows. Now, if you're going to use masking tape, it has to just be on the white page. Can't really put it on top of this unless I put some fixative spray on it first to hold it in place. And you see this mistake I made, it doesn't even matter now, right? So, because it was such a light line. You can use Post-it notes, but they will sort of lighten up on what's underneath. So it's better to just use paper once you've gotten into your rendering a little bit, right? So you could use a makeup sponge that's going to draw that shape. You could use this little tool. I kind of like this tool. It kind of does a pretty nice job because it can sort of control the edge of it a bit, right? So even though this is a white building, its shadow is still going to be grayish. And a lot of times white things tend to look a little bit purple or bluish in their shadows, okay? So, oops, got a little bit of overage there. Oops, still dirty. So what I like using, paper a little bit thinner than this. So like usually, pretty much regular paper, this is a little bit thick. And what's happening there is it's grabbing underneath a little bit, so it's making a little bit of a mess. So something a little bit thinner than that. The other thing is to try not to push in towards it, push away from it, so that you're not pushing powder underneath and grabbing on that edge. Right? So I could also just draw with the edge as neatly as I can, right? So that's what's kind of nice about buying these tools. They can help you be fairly precise. So don't be afraid of a little contrast. So this is like doing a finished rendering. I want to show you there's some other methods that are a little bit looser. Darn.
I can't even like wipe it because it's just weird.
So yeah, so I'm gonna have to erase it out. But this is gonna be white, so if I clean that up, I can, right? So I use my eraser, clean it up. There's also the erasing shield that I showed you guys last week, right? That I can erase with. So it's in, can you grab the sponge bag, the orange bag? It's in there. This, you can buy, this is a drafting tool. It's a shield for erasing. You can also color up against it as long as it's not bent like this one. But if I want to erase this line but keep that crisp, I just put the erasing shield down and I can erase that off. Gives me a nice sharp line, okay? And I don't even need a little pen eraser in that case. I can just use a regular one. Make sure your eraser's clean too. So that's another thing that's great about sandpaper. I can clean off my erasers on the sandpaper before I touch my page so that I'm not getting smudges. Okay, so in clean hands. So usually when I'm in my studio, I have just some wet wipes nearby to use, and I have a soft, which I forgot to bring today, a soft little brush, like a, I think I might have one in my other box. I gotta remember to get everything out before I start doing this next time. You just get a little soft little, like a makeup brush, a watercolor brush, just to wipe off the erasing shavings. So this gives you a sort of finished kind of look. If you want to do a looser look, you could just use these really loosely, right? Just kind of do a quick thing and erase out. And so you're not trying to be as precious with it. right?
And those so fast.
And that was fast, and then it doesn't look as precise. You could also just use like a stick like this. Say I'm just going to pick up some color off of here and draw with that so that it has this more sketchy kind of appearance. So it's not trying to be like a perfect drawing, right? And you can kind of put it on with some, where you see the artist's hand, if you will, like a little like cross hatching. So it doesn't have to be as precise if you want. So if you want to do a more finished look, you know, you can go very carefully like I was showing there. If you want to do it more sketch-like, let there be a few strokes in how you put it on, right? You're not trying to make it perfectly smooth. You know, you could even show a little cast shadow here. Yeah, it's fast and it's loose and it kind of looks watercolory, like you just did this sort of watercolor sketch thing. See, I just drag it and it just looks kind of creative, right? Which is nice. So what I would suggest in your portfolio is that you have some pieces that are loosely sketchy, a little messy, right? Not sloppy, but just free. So they look super creative, right? And one piece that maybe you've taken a little more time to do more carefully, right? So I want to put, say, the windows. The windows will be quite dark inside. So you can also draw directly on the paper. It tends to look a little different, and you'll definitely have some overage that you have to get rid of off the page. But I could also use the stick to draw with. Like I could draw directly into this window if I want. Oops. Just support the page a bit here. So you can draw directly on. And that's, again, what's kind of nice about the new pastel by Prismacolor. They're hard and stiffer. They keep a good hard edge. They don't make a ton of powder the way normal art chalk pastels do. So you can do that too, and it gives you a stronger look. You could pick a different color if you want. So you see I'm using the side of the stick. I'm using that crisp edge, and I can color in that way. So that's another way to use it, right? And if I don't like what I have and I want to smooth it in, I can come back with the smudge stick and smooth it in. Right? So that's another way. Okay, so there's that. Now, what if I wanted to do some pencil crayon shading either with this or on its own? So again, we're not trying to do a perfect rendering, we're trying to make it look like an idea. So better to, what I would want, there is a video that I think I've shared with you guys before, but I'll share it again just in case. What we want to be careful of is don't color like this and then like this. We don't want to do that color thing anymore. What's better to do with these, if they're just going to be concept sketches, is to just apply the color in sort of hatch lines and just make it look kind of artsy, sketchy, okay? And again, not trying to make it completely fully shaded in. It's just to give it a bit of some volume, right? So you can draw and hatch a bit. So let's see, I already drew some of this in, so maybe I will erase some of this just to show you what if I did it with pencil crayon. Now, one of the things I love about the pastel, I can erase out reflections and things, or I can put a strong color on and then take it back off to be able to have a soft color. It's quite forgiving, right? Now, so let's say I wanted to shade it instead with, so I'm just going to go right across. Some people like to still use a card because some people find they can start well, but they can't finish well, which is common with this method, right? So if I wanted to do some shading, let's say I want to do inside this window. So, and I want to pick a dark color. So here, I might want to do this against this way or start this way if you're better at starting, but you can't stop neatly. Start the line and stop against an edge. You can also use Post-it notes, right? So that can help and it helps you be fast, right? You can also go down from the bottom and pull up and fade up and start at this edge and pull down and fade away. Because I put my pencil there, my paper a bit crooked. So, and then I might add a little bit of extra shadow just here, or I could even draw this way here. And I could layer on top, oh, I want some trees showing inside here. So I start with some dark, and then maybe I put some subtle tree coloring in there. Stronger tree, here we go. And maybe there's some grass. Basically, it would reflect what that is, though. So, okay. Let's say I put that there, but I didn't want it all blue, right? I could erase out a bit and then add in some green. Some trees in here. Either with your pastel or your pencil crayon. You can also blend all of these together. Let's say you've got this sort of quick thing with some pastel, but you want to give it some precision. So you can come back and say, I'm going to clean up this edge here, and I'm going to add a bit of tone on top of there. Or I've got my basic color here, but now I want some emphasis. I want to add some, you know, highlights maybe, or some shadows. I want to add some wood grain into this. You can come back with your pencil crayons on top to give it some detail. Okay. I want this to be stronger. Maybe I didn't get it dark enough with the pastel. You can put your pencil crayon on top and draw in your boards. Yeah. So, and you could use a ruler if you want. And I need this shadow under here darker. Let's make that darker. So the pastel and the pencil crayon work well together, where pastel by itself is a little slow, right? So you get some quick color on there with pastel. Even if it's not perfect, it's okay, because you can come back with your pencil crayons in similar tones and just give it a little bit of precision. Just a little bit of hatching on top. And keep building up that creative flair that you had in the image. So the two together, so you can put on your pastel without having to be as careful, and you can sharpen it up with your pencil crayons that you can use your pencil sharpener with. So, and that way you get something covered on quickly, whereas pencil shading sometimes can get a little messy looking or take way too long to do. So the two together are really wonderful that way, right? So what we want here, I'm kind of liking this deep blue inside here. That looks kind of nice. I like that. That would really show this window up, wouldn't it? I could put that in there. What do you think of that? Do you like it, Celia? You've made a really nice design here. So, I mean, marker would be awesome, but then you have to buy all those markers and you have to have enough color range, right? So if you've got some of that, that's great. And if you've got the money for that, wonderful. If not, here you have a way that you can make a nice drawing. And what's really nice is if you do make a mistake, you can erase it. right? Where marker, it's there. It's on there. It's solid. It's not coming off. And these little erasing shields, they're not expensive either. All these things I'm using it, very affordable. Okay, so starting to make that building look quite true, right? So foreground stuff. Oh, we're almost out of time already. Lord. So you could, use the same thing. You could also say, I want to use some pencil crayon. So, but what I like doing is that little bit of pastel underneath first. You can see how this looks kind of weak compared, right? And then you could add a little texture. So what I like to do, put a little bit of pastel underneath, get it covered quickly, add a little bit of texture or something with my pencil crayon. Add a little edge, for shadowing. So you can imagine it if I had some pastel under there first, how it's covered quickly, it's going to look strong, and then I can add little details. The other thing I can do too, see how this looks really smooth? Let's say I want that to have more texture, or I wanted some grass. So let's see, if I have some grass first, maybe I'll use this. I will use a sponge, put some grass on it. That's getting kind of dirty, right? So make some powder. Grab my sponge and get some grass on here. And put some grass here. Okay. See how fast? I mean, compared to pencil crayon, it's like, oh, it's done. You can erase anywhere that you go over the edge, right? So get some grass on there. And then you say, I want some texture now. So you get the color on there with the sponge, and then draw a little bit lightly with that, and it just picks up the tooth on the paper, and now it looks kind of grass-like. If you really want a little more detail, you can take your pencil crayon and say, let me add some grass. Right. But just in the foreground. Or take this thing here and you can do a little bit of texture, right? Shadows at the edges. Yeah, a little bit of both, right? And it looks really creative and loose, and that was supposed to be my driveway, so I'm gonna erase that. And done. So it's pretty easy. The one thing is try to keep your hands clean. Don't rub against it. So what I'm doing, I'm either moving from my shoulder or I'm supporting my arm on the edge of the table, sometimes on my pinky, so I'm not smudging it. We have to get away from that habit of the way we're doing our math and our English, and where our hand's always on the page. That won't work for this kind of thing, right? The other thing I try to do sometimes is I'm right-handed, so I'll try to start up here and move this way so that I'm not rubbing on top of things. The other thing you can do is just put a clean piece of paper underneath your hand so that you're not smudging your work with your hand. Okay? All right, so there's one thing you could do, right? So you can have that to take home as a practice shot to remind you, or take a picture of it. Okay. And the other thing I'd like to show you guys is how to do this kind of thing too, right? How to use markers. But we've kind of run out of time right now. So we'll have to look at marker another time. I'm going to make sure, though, that your drawings are coming along well. What I do want to mention in this, though, one of the things you see is that we have either no line on top and we color in behind, and we have a darker shadowy line underneath. So this was drawn with one of these, only with one of these, I think it was this pen. First, by hardly touching the paper, I did my construction line. Then I slowed down and pushed a bit for the shadow side, and then contact shadow underneath, just showing the edge a bit. And then I could add some rendering to that if I wanted. Here we see this one, right? Stronger shadow underneath, just pushing on my pen, slowing down a little, being really quick on my pen on the highlight sides, and then contrast with my rendering techniques. So you want to create, so this is a more finished smooth method. This is a sketchy method. So you see how you cross hatch your strokes. It's quick and loose, right? With some strong line. So if you were designing a piece of furniture, like your table, you might do some of this, right? So you want contrast in your lines, undersides dark. This was done with a brush tip pen, okay? So that one that has a flexible nib. So when you have curvy things, a curvy pen, right? Like a flexible nib pen is good when you have curvy things. Harder things, it's better to have a more precise type of pen, okay? And either way, you want to have thin lines on top, thick lines underneath, right? Or if there's a change, it goes from thick to thin. So, and to get thin, you just lighten up and speed up and pull up off the page. So, so you see, this is done very quickly and loosely. It looks creative. So if you could design a simple couch, a chair, something, you know, an accessory, doesn't matter. Put a bit of quick color on it like that, just grayscale. You don't have to have a million colors. You've got a nice looking thing. So a little bit of some sketching to show your ideas. Like you've got some artworks, that's great, or you took some nice photographs, that's awesome. You can put those things in your portfolio, but you got to show us a little bit your ideation, like how you came up with an idea, and then just show it with some contrast, right? So, like Sophie, if you don't want to use color, just do it in black and white with grayscale.
I kind of like the color. I didn't know that we were going to be doing it that way.
You can do what you want, right?
Like,
but
I didn't, that seems really cool and like easy, but I was like scared.
Yeah, but it's not that hard.
No.
So, and if you really want to get the feeling of park, great to use some greens and blues. It's going to feel park-like. If I want it, it's a bus shelter and it's in the city, I could easily use my grayscale markers and just do that. But it feels a little more urban. So this is really good when it's sort of more urban kinds of things. You know, if you really want to give it a park feel, probably use color. And the pastel's pretty approachable.
Yeah, like I thought that I saw a bunch of pencil crayons there and I was like,
Pencil crayons can be very slow, and then people get into the habit of that coloring problem, and then it just looks sort of sloppy. So, yeah, or too youthful, right? Like too much like we're kids in grade 8 or grade 9 or something. We don't want that. This looks more professional, right? Yeah, good. Okay, so let's have a break, clean up the table. You're welcome to stay and draw a little bit, but we need it to be clean by 2 p.m., okay? Because we're going to be drawing still lifes. I like what you've got over there, and you already have some line weight change in the sketch itself. Those can become part of your portfolio, those idea sketches. And then let's say you did those idea sketches above, and then below you did one that's more finished with some color and some, you know, like this. It's a page in your portfolio. Look at this cool idea. I was just playing around with some ideas for furniture, right? And add a little bit of marker or a little bit of pastel or pencil crayon. Ta-da, it's done. So the final one is the one you color. The others are just black and white with nice line contrast, showing your construction lines, all of that. That's a concept page. That's good, right? So, yeah, you can leave your work here. We just have to clean up our table. And I've got more tables here for today so that we've got lots of space to branch out, right?